Oh, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Perustopia live show on The Alchemists of Loom by Elise Kova. I totally just dropped like 5 things when I picked up that book. So we're going to be doing a live show on this. It was our February book of the month, so we're just a little bit late, but it's okay because we're here and we're so excited to discuss it. So, Reagan, would you like to jump in with your thoughts on this novel?
Sure. So The Alchemist of Loom, if you guys aren't aware, is an immersive, really creative fantasy novel that follows our main character, the White Wraith, who is literally kind of a criminal. She essentially works in the black market and harvests organs to sell, and not just like anyone's organs, but dragon organs. And then also there's our other main character, Chevra. How do you say his name? I say Chevra.
I say Sevra.
Sevra.
Sevra. But I know Chevra. It actually took me so long to figure it out because I like was pronouncing it in my head like I don't know how, but when I watched your review, I was like, okay, so that's how you pronounce it? Because you know when you pronounce the names in your head and you think that that's you never try to pronounce them out loud.
Hormone or whatever. What people say. Yeah. But anyway, it also follows Sevra, who is part of dragon royalty. And he's doing everything he can to overthrow the Dragon Lord and put his sister on the throne. This is definitely like a complex fantasy book. It has a really interesting plot. We mentioned these 2 characters, but the thing that I think was probably my favorite part was this really interesting setting. It's basically a world that's broken in 2. There are the ruling overlords who are the dragons who have all the power and have a variety of magical abilities depending, on their organs essentially. And then there are kind of the human type people who are separated into guilds, which are very much fastened off of like the historical guild system of like crafting. And they're alchemists or just crafters of explosions. And that's kind of where our other main character, White Wraith, comes in because she harvests organs to make chimera, which are kind of these human dragon hybrids. It's a lot of plot that I just quickly went over, but sounds complicated. But it's really good, I thought. What do you think, Sasha?
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to summarize it because I'm like, okay, my review, all my footage got deleted on my first review, so I had to refilm it, and I'm so mad. And like today was the first day I was able to refilm it. So when I tried to describe it, I know both the first and second time, I totally botched it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna read off the flat because this is such a lot. There's so much plot. There's lots of world. There's lots of characters. There's lots of just like stuff in there. And I really did like this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did have a little bit of a struggle just getting into it because me with steampunk, I'm like very hesitant because I'm like, okay, I know I'll like it once I get into it, but it's about me going into a genre that I don't normally read, and so it's like just stepping into like some like weird waters that you're not really used to all the time. So it was really great, and after like probably 50 to 75 pages, I got into it and I read it pretty quickly after that, but it's just getting past those and getting the world building in your head, then you could immerse yourself into the whole entire storyline, and I thought the characters were great. I love Sevra because he was a strong guy, but he also had a soft side, and I also love Ari. She was so strong and badass, and the whole entire ensemble cast, it just was fun. It was great, and I'm excited for the next one.
Yeah, it comes out in July.
Really?
Yeah, it comes out this year. But what you said about a lot of that stuff, I totally agree. People assume, because I read a lot of fantasy, that's my favorite genre, but I don't read a lot of steampunk or fantasy. I always read kind of mythical fantasy. So similarly, it took me a minute to kind of get my bearings in this world and kind of ease my way into this magic system. And I also feel like there was a lot of different elements to this world, which made it really rich and ultimately had a lot of payoff. But it does take a second because you kind of get thrown in. You're like, what's going on? Where am I? Like, who's what's happening? But you're right. Like about 50 pages in, I got my bearings, and then I was like, okay, this world is super cool. And I have to agree. I loved the characters. I loved that there was always a bit of humor in it. Their interactions, I thought were just so fun and funny, and I just really, really appreciated that. I also thought the guild system was really cool, and I think this is kind of the history nerd system of me, but like guild systems like historically are really interesting, and I love that the author took inspiration from that and then kind of expanded it into this sort of steampunk fantasy alchemist sort of route. I thought that was really, really clever. One thing I will say I thought the author's really talented at is writing fighting sequences. I thought they were really clear. Normally, muddled. At least sometimes I'm like, oh, there's like an arm, there's like a sword involved, something happened. I felt like the fighting sequences in this book I felt were very fluid and I could follow it, and I really appreciate it.
You know, something like going off of that, like I know that like, you know, me writing, I'm really bad at writing fight scenes because it's hard to like incorporate all the typical fighting moves in a way that doesn't make it feel muffled and like totally just an alien. But she did a really good job with that. Like I noticed that and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull from this and like kind of learn from that and see like how she does it, because whenever I write fight scenes, I tend to go on YouTube and see like two people fighting like in like kung fu. Yeah, and that works.
Like, I think it's probably smart as like an author. I know Susan Denard's like a karate master, and I'm like, how would you write a fight if you don't know anything about fighting? You know, like
you look up fighting videos.
Or taking actual fighting lessons, I feel like is a really effective approach, because I've never really been confronted with having to write a fighting scene, but thinking about it, it's very difficult because I know nothing about fighting. Proper stances, where do you jab? I don't know.
No, and that's like why I'm like, I don't know what to do. It's like alien to me. So like this is really good. And something I really liked about the guild system, because okay, so I watched an anime for a while, called Fairy Tail, and they have like these guilds, and so like I was like, this is like guilds. I love it. I love having guilds in anything because they're the historical basis is cool, and also it's like so easy to mold it to your own liking, to your own book, because it's like this concept. And then you can mold it even more like finely, and then you could create whatever you want with it, and it's so cool.
So I've seen some Fairy Tail, and I totally see that, but then I also makes me think of another anime that I really, really like, which was Full Alchemist. Just the Alchemist with the whole chimeras and like the use of magic and the organs. I was like, it just combines so many unique elements. And I thought specifically the dragon elements of this book were really unique. I have not read a lot of dragon fantasy, and the dragon fantasy I have read I didn't really like. But I thought this sort of beast human, like I thought the author really did an effective job integrating dragon lore
into it. You know, you wouldn't normally think, okay, steampunk and the dragons. I normally don't think about that stuff meshing together. Whenever I think steampunk, I think like a fantasy world that the main fantastical element is steampunk, not dragons. Right. That was cool.
Yeah, and how he was able to like blend elements of steampunk and then traditional magic together into this kind of hybrid story, I thought was just really, that's what I just feel like the story had such a strong and unique plot that I was just very impressed all the way through. She always surprised me with the turns that this world took, and I was like,
yes. Oh, I mentioned that in my review. I was like, I usually am able to spot plot twists coming because I'm just a reader like that. I like zoom in on everything and I judge everything and I think about what could be the outcome of said things. And like, I usually am able to figure out plot twists, like, you know, surprises. But this one, like, I think that I was so focused on like understanding and really getting into the steampunk and fantasy in the world that like those things kind of went past me. And I kind of like that. I like that I wasn't expecting the unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. And I just have to agree, like, I was just, again, I said this also in my review, and then about the world, and if we even want to deep dive a little further into the political intrigue of it all, I thought having all these different perspectives in the story, I felt not only made it rich, but I also like that we had the perspective of the villains. Like, being able to read the chapters of the guy's right-hand woman was so dark and creepy, but so fascinating at the same time. You know, like, reading her perspective was like so creepy. Like when she killed her freaking sister. Yeah, it makes you get shivers and it was wild. Something funny about this book, and like I don't mean to bring my own book into this, but it has lots of like things that like, you know, I as a writer have done in my own novel, and I really love that because I'm like, it works in writing. You can have your villain's perspective without giving away too much stuff, right? And you can still have like a really badass character with those like, you know, flaws, and you can just like, I love the multiple points of views. I love that we got those, and I'm like, it made me really like confident in the fact that you can have like a villain's point of view, and you can still let the reader creep out without giving too much away. Yeah, it's always good. Personally, just like as a reader, always only coming from a reader perspective, multiple perspectives to me, especially in fantasy, is always a winner because it allows you as a writer to give so many different viewpoints of the same world, so it doesn't feel, so you can like explore different areas without it feeling info dumpy, which I just like. I love being able to things from multiple perspectives. And I always love like a few chapters of a villainous perspective, but they creep me out. And I think it makes the villain feel even scarier. Like to be like, otherwise I feel like we try, at least, you know, if you're not a villain, you see an evil person and you try to ascribe them normal human rational thoughts and feelings, and you try to understand why they're going about doing something, try to humanize them, which makes them sometimes scarier, but sometimes if you read from a villain's perspective and you realize that truly they are just horrible and a sociopath, you realize that nothing about them is redeemable and they cannot be saved and they need to be stopped at all costs. I think it just ups the ante.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, when I was younger, I don't know if you're the same like this, but when I first started off reading fantasy, like, I did not like multiple points of views. And I think that's just because, like, when I was younger, like, this is, like, probably when I was, like, 14 or 15, I was like, okay, I kind of blocked myself off to, like, doing that because I'm like, it's just too much information. And now, like, when I started hitting 17, 18, 19, 20, like, I started being like, wait, this is how, like, I like reading fantasy because, you know, I always, like, when I was reading the younger end of YA, and it was, like, not always younger means, like, one point of view, but just saying, like, the books I read when I was younger, like, just, like, first point of view, like, always seemed right. And then once you brought in more points of views, it just seemed like, what? Why would they do this? But then I started reading it. Yeah, and I just wanted to know more, and that's how I got to know more. And it was so, I love that.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so let me see if there's any questions, but if not, I have some questions. So here, let me give one of my questions. So it's kind of fun. So if you guys want to, like, answer these questions in the comments, do it too. So there's 5 guilds of Loom. So I'm gonna say which one is each for those of you who have not, like, read the book, and then Reagan and I will say which ones we would be in. So, because if we could choose. So the first is the Alchemists, and they are, so they're develop chimaras, and they're kind of like, I really described these badly, so please jump in if you want to, like, explain what exactly, like, the Alchemists are, but they're the only guild not to be under the Dragon King's thumb. So, like, you know, and they're, like, they're just cool, and the main character is an alchemist, so I was, like, honestly, like, drawn to that at first. I'm like, of course I would be an alchemist, but then I started getting to know the other guilds, which is, like, rivets, specialized in refining processes in steel metal mines and applications for gold. Then there's the revolvers, explorers, all the uses for gun and explosions, harvesters, supplies all the bare minerals to all the other guilds, and then the ravens moves people and goods all around Loom. So, like, which one would you want to be?
So scary. Not the ravens. I would be terrified. I don't even like speeding on my bike, let alone recklessly driving. They're so crazy.
They remind me of Mad Max sometimes. Like, the crazies.
Yes. They're so scary. Oh, I hated it. I thought the revolvers were cool. And I thought just because I really loved that character who was a revolver in the book. I really liked that. Alchemists, I think, is fascinating, but, like, chimeras, I don't know if I'd want to be one / like, operate on people. I'd probably want to be a revolver and do, you know, explosions.
Yeah, I think the revolver would be so much fun. And if, like, I had to, like, think about, you know, honestly, if I had to, like, think about something that I would do as a person, I would probably be a harvester, just because I'm like, I don't want to do anything, like, because they just, like, supply all the bare minerals to all the other guilds. So I'm like, you know, this is the least likely that I'll get screwed up and something, like, will go wrong, I would hope. Like, so, kind of like the guilds, in a way, remind me of Divergent's faction system, which is and I love that, the type of faction system that's in that novel, because, like, it was the first time I've ever seen that. So that kind of reminded me of this. So I was like, that would be a fun question. Like, what faction would you be in? But what guild?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the next question I have is with the 3 dragon houses. Okay, so the Rock, Tam, and how do you pronounce the other one? Sin?
Yeah.
I can never pronounce X words. Like, I'm always the worst at it. And, like,
Sin.
Yeah, so, like, what if you guys don't know what those mean? Like, Rock is the strongest house, Tam is the second strongest, and then Zin is the weakest, pretty much. I don't think I would want to be in the strongest house, even though I know that is probably the best. I don't know. Maybe Tam.
Maybe Tam. I don't know. The dragon politics are, like, too much for me.
It was a lot.
I wouldn't be involved in dragon politics or dragon houses. It seems scary.
I know. Like, I was like, okay, you know, the guild's more easy to understand. Then there's like the dragon houses, and it's like, these are not Harry Potter houses at all. They're not that easy to like want to be in. Like, I'm like, no.
Not like the cunning are here and the brave are here and the smart are here. Like, there's just a lot going on in each one of these houses.
You know, it was interesting because, you know, these two worlds, the world of Loom and then the dragons, like, you know, they're vastly different, very vastly different. And I think that was interesting how in this novel, she managed to create two different, like, systems and put it into, like, one novel that isn't, like, this book is, like, almost 400 pages long, but it's, like, lower, like, upper 300s. Like, she managed to do it in a relatively quick way, but it's still understandable.
I know. Yeah, and she did a very effective job. Like, it was concise and clear, and it wasn't, like, overly complicated, and it wasn't, I just felt like she was able to combine seemingly disparate elements together really effectively.
Yes, exactly. And that's important. Like, I was worried going to this book because I knew that, like, there would be a lot of information on here. Like, something that actually made me happy about it is, like, when I went over to turn over the book, like, Lindsay quoted it, my co-author, and then one of my best friends, Ben. So, like, you know, it was cool, like, yeah, and you know Ben, like, everybody, like, Ben, like, it was really, it made me feel better, and so I messaged them, and I was like, so, like, tell me how Lise Kova writes, tell me your stuff, and then I researched her Air Awakens series.
I think that's great.
I want to read it so badly.
No, like, literally, when I mentioned this book, people were like, the Air Awakens series by her is amazing, and I was like, oh, I'm intrigued.
So, yeah, and, like, you know, this book was, I think that, like, more people need to read it, like, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, more
I feel
people
like Kova's underrated, for sure.
Yeah, I know, and, like, Air Awakens is a pretty popular series, but not a lot of people have read this one yet, and I'm like, come on, guys, like, if you like fantasy, don't worry about the steampunk element as much, because, like, you know, it's kind of like, well, when you mix any other genre into a fantasy genre, like, it usually, like, you know, there's fantastical undertones that you can latch onto, and then the other tones come in, and it's more gradual, and it's easier to understand. And so, you know, just trust us on this. Like, I think that this would be a book I would recommend to people who want to get into steampunk, but don't want to read, like, a heavily steampunk novel, but something that has, like, similar undertones to it, too.
Right, and you always have to remember, even with fantasy or with any genre, there's always going to be elements of a story because there's always going to be a human component because humans are writing the book. So thematically, character feelings and explorations are always going to be or themes that you see even in real life, just translated in a fantasy setting. So it's not, there's always going to be something familiar to latch onto, be it good, bad, you know, or that. It's just, you just gotta take the first steps and try a little bit of steampunk or a little bit of fantasy.
Exactly, and that kind of leads me into our book of the month. That is our current book of the month because I'm really excited because I'm starting reading this book.
It's great.
Yeah, okay, because I'm really excited because I started reading at the dog park the other day. But so it is you know, it's a gladiator novel, and let me get it up really quickly because I have the book cover over here, but I don't have the books in my handbag. Okay, here we go. So it's called The Valiant by Leslie Livingston, and I'm so excited to read this book with you guys. And Reagan, you've read it, right?
Yeah, I just finished it last night.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to see your review. Have you posted it?
Not yet.
Okay, then I'm excited to watch it when you do.
So this novel is really great. It's a historical fiction with some fantastical elements to it, set during the Roman Empire. It follows our main character, Fallon, who's part of a Celtic tribe in Britannia. At the beginning of, like, when she's very young, Caesar comes and conquers her lands, and her sister is bartered for her father, so she wants, obviously, to seek revenge. However, some circumstance happens. She's kidnapped, sold into slavery, and then sold to a Roman female gladiator school where she's now fighting for Caesar. There's lots of fighting. There's lots of drugs.
I'm so excited. Because, like, honestly, when I first saw the book, like, I first saw this book a while ago, like, it was, like, they're promoting at BEA or something, and I was like, oh, that was cool. Is it a fantasy? And then when I learned that it has fantastic elements, but it is mainly historical fiction, I'm excited. I have not really, okay, so, like, right now I'm getting my history degree, and I know, Reagan, you have a history degree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, you know, majority of, like, what I'm learning in school right now is, like, you know, not this far back. And so I'm so excited to learn about, like, you know, the Roman Empire and like that type of stuff from a historical fiction perspective before I have to go in and learn like the legit details. But I'm excited to read it. I have never read like a historical fiction like this, so I'm pumped. Okay, so are you agreeing, Reagan?
Yes, you should be pumped.
Yes, yes. I'm really excited. Okay, guys, so that's all for our live show today. Thank you for joining us. We rate our books 4 out of 5 stars for The Alchemists of Loom. And what did you rate it?
4 out of 5 stars.
Yep.
Too.
Awesome. Awesome. I feel like we do same ratings all the time, like without knowing it.
We always like look at it, I'm always like, wow, I'm glad Sasha and I are on the same page.
And it's funny because like Reagan, like I feel like we did a swap too, because Reagan, now you're moving up to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I moved down here, but then I'm moving in again. So it's like, what's happening?
I don't
We're just
know.
like
Where
the
are we
moving
gonna
gals. I know, they're just gonna see us in different apartments like for the next like few years, just like, what are you guys doing? Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to check out our reviews, Reagan's is up right now. Mine is going up tomorrow. My new one, I'm really mad I deleted the footage. And thank you guys for watching. Reagan, any last words?
Nope. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.